Matthew, I was reading the internet.
Ooh,
and do you want to know what I came across? An article posted by the one and only Craig Dealey. Russian TV to air its own patriotic retelling of Chernobyl story. God bless him.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny. I got a sneak peek look at that, and I had no idea that Vladimir Putin was the one himself to put his hands on the nuclear rods and suck the power out of them, saving all of Russia.
And there was a CIA spy there that caused the whole meltdown, did you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Infiltrated their nuclear power plant to cause a meltdown. Yep.
I mean, the CIA's done plenty of shiesty shit. Oh, come on, don't give them too much credit.
I know. They're like, we never make mistakes, comrade. This is clearly foreign interference from our great enemy. Yeah.
Foreign demon.
Yeah. Boy, Open Wide O Earth, Mr. Anderson, starts off right where we left off in this horror element
sure does.
Of being in the dark with dosimeters just crackling away. And our 3 divers in the water doing their best to get those World War II crank flashlights fired up again.
Oh, they're still like dusting off Nazi blood on those things.
Yeah, no shit, right? I love those like crank radios. Those are so cool. Yeah.
But in this situation, oh God, that were the only source of light you have, which, I did enjoy the 3rd episode of the official Chernobyl podcast with the show's creator. But it was interesting to hear. You didn't listen to that one?
Nope.
The most interesting, well, there's a lot of interesting stuff, but one of the details he was like, we actually chose for them to have crank flashlights in the scene because in real life, they didn't have shit. Like it would just been completely pitch black. And it's like, it's an unfilmable thing for a television show.
Yeah.
But they were like, in real life, these guys knew the layout of the pipes so well. They just followed certain pipes they knew would take them to the right place. Like, God damn, cool. That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, so terrifying.
What are your overall impressions this week?
Well, thoroughly impressed. Great episode. It's fucking excellent. The show has been consistently excellent. All 3 episodes. What a fucking bummer. Absolutely. The saddest one so far. I mean, good God. I mean, basically the title of it is Earth opening up to swallow all of the dead that have been produced by this horrible disaster.
You know when bros kind of get together and they're like, I don't know what's worse, drowning or burning to death. I think radiation wins.
I gotta say.
I mean, you're burning to death for weeks.
Yeah, man. Jesus Christ.
Horrific. It's horrific.
It's unbelievable.
And it's I think it's important that they showed it. I always wondered, it's always going to be a challenge when you're dealing with real people.
Right.
And you're telling obviously it's taking creative liberties, so to speak, but you I think it's important to show the devastation because one of the cool things about this show and something that's done really well is that up until this point, we haven't really seen like physical devastation of people. Just a lot of talk about what may happen or what is probably going to happen.
Right.
And I think you can do that for a while, but you're going to get to a point where you want the viewer to sort of have a visceral reaction to the possibility of what happened and is the possibility of what could happen. So we've been being told by all these experts, Legasov and all these guys, that there's going to be terrible consequences for this. And I think it's important that they start rolling those out. And I know they did it pretty extensively this week as we see some of the firefighters and some of the control room engineers, quote unquote engineer, succumbing to their injuries. And it's really brutal. It's rough. I don't know, man. Wouldn't you hope that they just blasted you in the head like with a gun?
God, at a certain point.
Right.
I know. I didn't get to like go dive into the whole thing, but there was one of our listeners posted an article about the person who survived the longest with an acute, Chernobyl, directly in the reactor room level of radiation exposure. And he was kept alive 83 days. And it's actually been seen as pretty wildly unethical because both him and his family didn't want it. And I think he was a survivor of the Japanese big nuclear disaster. I think the Fukushima one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that poor guy kept alive 83 days in the same condition of these guys. And I, the show doesn't quite lay it all out, but I think these guys were only alive for a couple weeks after the Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And it looks excruciating.
It really is. But I love the choice to sort of dive in right where we left off. I think that was a good play.
You kind of have to. You left it basically on a cliffhanger. You do.
But you know how sometimes shows will then go to these other characters doing their other things and make you sit on it. Like Walking Dead.
I knew it was coming.
Versus just saying we need to open here. And it's because it matters so much to the main through line, which is, of course, the reactor melting down.
Right. And, and I think it's also important because just putting this into a narrative and into a episodic format like we have here, it's history. So to make a cliffhanger based on history, you're like, well, the answer's out there. And so you can't dangle that like, who knows what's going to happen for very long. It's kind of like you kind of just have to get back into it and resolve what happens next. Because in truth, these guys are successful and they make it out.
They do. I'll tell you, this is a bit of a side tangent, but before we press on with more of this particular episode, I wanted to share, first of all, two things. Number one, I went into a nuclear reactor rabbit hole, big time.
Oh, delightful.
I watched a ton of videos, and now I'm basically as qualified as Tuptanov, I think.
As Homer Simpson. Yes, go ahead.
No, as Tuptanov, head engineer, 25 years old. The lady later in the episode, she's like, what?
Yeah, she was pretty shocked. Yeah. That's true, though. What? He really was fucking 25.
But I think her point is kind of like the guy who was a shoe salesman.
Right.
I think that's the kind of point they were trying to make a little. I'm not really sure. But I didn't quite understand the whole control rods thing. So there's a couple of visual things on YouTube that really help. Essentially, what you see is the control rods go into the moderator, which is the water. And what they do is they soak up a lot of these neutrons, like they kind of stick to them to stop the chain reaction from just going out of control. So it's kind of cool, like when you watch some of the visual effects of it, and I'm talking in very basic layman terms, clearly, but you would see like the splitting of the atom, so to speak, the prototypical way you see it drawn, and as they're bouncing around and increasing. That's what they do. They lift the control rods out and then they put the control rods in. And I guess that's how they sort of control it. And that's really interesting. And it was cool to watch. And then, of course, the heat generates steam, which turns the turbine, which creates electricity. And that's kind of how it works. The difference is one's nuclear. What we use in a lot of places now is coal. But it's really crazy that these control rods play such a crucial role in keeping the reaction in check. Now, there's a ton of different fail-safes and a lot more complicated stuff going on here that I'm not talking about because I'm not qualified to. But there's a couple of cool YouTube videos. If you just type in like nuclear reactor, how it works, watch some of the videos. It's really awesome. And then second story, shout out to Dave, listener of the show. I hung out with Dave the other day and we watched a movie called The China Syndrome.
Ooh, heard of, haven't seen it though.
Do you know anything about it?
I know it's like a hypothetical, basically almost like a sci-fi story, right? About a nuclear power station having a massive full-blown meltdown, right?
It is kind of. It's not science fiction at all. It's just it's almost like here's something.
It's like a what if.
It's a what if, and it comes out. It came out in 1979, so before Chernobyl. And dude, it's crazy. It's crazy to read about.
How accurate is it?
Dude, so much of the same shit they talk about in the China Syndrome. So if you have a minute, I recommend watching it. It's 1979. Jack Lemmon, he's amazing. Michael Douglas is really good. He's young. And Jane Fonda is good.
Wow. Damn. That's a hell of a cast.
It is. It's a really good cast. It's super 70s. There's a kind of couple like goofy things, but you just get over it. But for the most part, the storytelling is really legit. And it's interesting because it's such an American take on the possibility, which is the interest of the company, right? Which is, so essentially what happens is there's a bit of an issue. And then they want to proceed later. And Jane Fonda's character and Michael Douglas's character, they work for the media. And they are, old school, honest, as trees are tall. We just want the truth kind of media people. And Jack Lemmon runs the fucking facility. And then you start getting other interests involved, and it gets a little, Wilford Brimley's in it. And it's really cool because they talk about the China syndrome is sort of just this like made up, they call it a fanciful term, which just means, the old wives' tale. Oh, if you keep digging, you'll end up in China, right? That stupid thing that people say sometimes. Dig all the way to China, right? That's like something Bugs Bunny would say. Basically, it's suggesting that if it melts down and it drops into the groundwater, you're gonna have problems. And I was like, holy shit, it's crazy to watch this having just watched 2 episodes of Chernobyl, because I watched episode 3 today and now I'm reflecting on it even more. It's really cool because they talk about the control rods, they talk about this, they talk about all these different things. There's probably more focus on the technical in the Chernobyl series for sure, but it's really fascinating because of it becomes a thing where it's like, oh, we shouldn't run this. And they're like, but we're going to lose $500,000 or $500 million a day or some crazy number. And the company's like, no, just go forward with it. We're fine. And it gets pretty crazy. It gets to be a pretty intense situation, but it's definitely worth checking out. I think it's worth watching. Yeah. 1979. I never found myself bored, and I was like, this is pretty compelling. And it helps. It essentially helps having watched Chernobyl, right?
Right.
Yeah, but that's cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious about that movie.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So it made me think a lot about Chernobyl, and I thought it was fascinating because it came out in 1979, so it came out before Chernobyl even happened.
Right. And evidently, I was just reading about it as you were talking. The 3 Mile Island accident happened 3 days after the movie was released.
Yes.
Or 12 days. 12 days.
Yeah.
Later.
So anyway, a point about that, the guy Dave I was watching it with, he's like in his 60s, early 60s. It's a friend of the show's dad. And he, he does this movie night thing. And he was saying that people like audibly reacted to a specific line that I don't remember in the movie because of the 3 Mile Island incident.
Oh, crazy.
Like the whole theater like gasped. And I'm like, that is really fucking cool, man. Crazy. Yeah. So if you want to expand a little bit into the fictional realm of this type of storytelling, check out China Syndrome. So free shout out for them.
We'll take our check at Liberty Street Geek.
P.O. Box 3656. Westport, Mass. 02790. So, yeah, man, it was really cool. And I think if people are listening to this show and they like the Chernobyl story, I think they'll get something from the China Syndrome because it's going to be heightened in their mind right now. Chernobyl is a much more intense retelling. I mean, China Syndrome is a little more antiseptic. It's more, it's more like politics,
political drama.
Yeah, it's got that whole piece to it. But it's pretty cool. But anyway, our divers are successful, Matthew.
They're successful. And one of the things I love about this scene and the contrast of, these moments of Legasov and Sherbina sitting there waiting versus, the guys come out, the divers make it out, fists fucking raised, the soldiers are applauding them, handing them fucking beer bottles. And it's like, these guys, for this is like a moment of light shining through and a small victory in this. And for the dudes in the know, like Legasov and Sherbina, it's still like, ooh, we still have so far to go. And we also know how dire their exposure was. Like they never get to enjoy these small victories. I mean, it's a moment for them of like, okay, good. At least we avoided that catastrophe. Now back to the other 15 catastrophes we're going to have to solve. But it's such a great scene of, just a little bit of camaraderie of, hey, we came out alive. We got this done.
Crazy. Yep. Very crazy. And then, they get a little round of applause and man, it's such an insidious thing because it's not like the only thing you can really watch. The only time, I think probably one of the most interesting things about the Chernobyl story and the retelling of that story by HBO is that it explores things a little differently in terms of sacrifice. Because think of the things you see in storytelling with sacrifice. You see somebody, typically speaking, in some sort of drama. You'll see somebody literally step in front of a bullet for somebody. You'll see somebody say, no, I'll go down and I'll turn the thing off and I'll drown in the submarine. You see somebody go, I'll dive on the grenade, or I'll cross enemy lines and try to pull the guy out, or I'll stay on this machine gun until it's out of bullets and then I will die, or I'll rush into the helicopter to rescue the downed pilots and fight off all the fucking guys and then I'll die. What's crazy about this is what you're really seeing is this odd, there's something just so haunting and dreadful about it, because they come out, they get this round of applause, but we all know sitting here, we all know what's going to happen to these guys. And it's kind of fucking weird that it doesn't immediately happen like you would imagine a sacrifice of this type of heroism is. You know, fireman goes into a burning building and dies getting a kid out, or just dies trying to go in. You know, just this kind of thing. A man confronts a crazed shooter and gets shot and saves lives and shoots him. You know what I mean? This is, you're not dead yet. Now you just wait around to die. I mean, that is a mind fuck.
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, as this show goes on, you know, we've watched 3 episodes now. At the end of it, you know, I mean, there's a lot of just great filmmaking and performance and even cinematography. It's all really, really good. I mean, there's a reason the show has been as popular as it is and as highly rated as it is. But I think my single favorite artistic choice thus far, especially by the end of this episode, is the music. The music is our reminder of the monster that's there that you can't see. Because even in the, you know, it's actually these 2 scenes back to back, really, where first we see the divers coming up and, you know, they are successful, and we have this moment that would normally be at least, like I was saying, a crack of light. Good. We've made at least some progress, some headway, and it's a moment of like kind of respite. But the music remains absolutely like cold, and it's just that kind of shivering, ominous noise that leaves you uncomfortable. You don't get to be comfortable in this moment that you should have at least a sigh of relief. You don't get that sigh of relief because we know that the danger is now still here and still strong, and especially for these 3 guys. And in the following scene with
the muted palette as well, right? The visual palette.
Yes, exactly. That kind of just gray blue.
Yeah, it's just washed out.
But I can't wait to talk about this moment when Ludmilla gets to see Vasily.
Sure.
That the way that is shot versus the music that is scoring it, the contrast is so excellent.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why this show, from the very first few frames, has set out with a certain tone, and it has maintained that tone throughout. There is no deviation from the tone. There is no deviation from the mission of this story and the way it's being told.
Exactly. And what do we just talk about with Mr. Brooks and you know, other legendary film ice pirates? how much when you can see amateur filmmaking when the tone is fucking just all over. But I don't mean to say amateur like they have no idea what they're doing, but just not, you know, there's not masterful fucking filmmaking, and a big part of that is capturing a tone and maintaining it.
You know what I'll say? It's a symptom of a lack of a clear direction, which like doesn't mean the filmmaker doesn't have the direction or the ambition. It just may mean that the studio had a lot more, and the executive producer had a lot different idea of what was handed over. And that's when you see a lot of things seem so tonally, like a tonal kaleidoscope. I think that's what we described Mr. Brooks as, right?
Yeah, and I mean, to think too, I feel like we've mentioned this before. We haven't talked about it too much. Each and every episode, all of them, are written by Craig Mazin, directed by Johan Renck. 2 guys, the only 2 people writing and directing this, the same one for each episode. And I think that for a miniseries, yeah, that's the fucking way to go. You have just this clear, concise vision that is maintained. It doesn't waver. It doesn't, you know, there are times when shows, especially longer running shows, benefit from having an outside director who hasn't been on the same set for 10 years to come in and bring in a slightly different vision, shake things up, you know, add something that hasn't been there. But for this, when you're telling one elongated story with a very, you know, specific tone and theme, I think that's the way to go to keep it this one, you know, 2-man team's vision.
What's interesting about Renck is he made his bones in commercials and music videos.
Ooh, well, that's all tone right there. That's like nothing but like, impressionistic stir up a feeling in you.
You always get nervous though with that kind of, quick cut sort of visual storytelling of a music video, but I'm sure that's changed over the years compared to what it used to be. But he did direct an episode of The Walking Dead.
Oh, interesting.
One
I don't
episode.
know which episode that is.
Vatos, season 1, episode 4.
Oh, I remember that one. That's a good episode.
Me too. Yeah, I remember that one too.
Also, I'm just looking. He directed one of, I think, the very final David Bowie music video, Lazarus, which is fucking excellent.
That is crazy, man.
That's an incredible music video.
Really
fucking makes
eerie.
me cry, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really eerie. It's a really eerie video. Really awesome song too.
Everybody should check that out. Yeah.
So, Ludmila.
4 days after the explosion, she is in Moscow now at Hospital 6 to come and try and see her husband.
And she's breaking all the rules.
Well, breaking the rules, but also kind of the wink, wink, this is the way things are done. Like, you can't do that, but you slide me a couple bucks and you could do that. I'll just look the other way.
Yeah.
So much bribery.
Yep. Unsurprising.
And I love how it's like not even something where she's like, oh, am I going to have to bribe? She's like, okay, yeah, I brought bribe money. Here you go. Like, I know how this shit works.
Too funny.
Brutal, though.
And we get to see the helicopter crews working. We cut away from them. Like you said, that sort of slow-mo, they're embracing, and we feel just a gut punch. Because even though it's a respite from this, it's almost like the beginning of saying goodbye.
Right. And also the way it's shot. I mean, you change the music in this, you make a brighter, more happy score, and this could be the ending shot of a romantic movie of two characters who finally are reunited at the end. It is shot as if it's a happy reunion and things are now resolved. That's the way it's shot, and then the music is utterly haunting and eerie and dreadful, and it makes you just remember that they're happy right now, but this is, us as viewers, we know this is fleeting, and it's painful to watch these two people who don't know that it is a fleeting moment.
Sure.
It's so rough.
And we have a check-in with Legasov and Sherbina.
Sherbina.
The guys look cool in the helicopter, but you're just
dude,
like,
they look so cool.
You poor bastards. This looks like Fallout, right? Like
it
Fallout
really
characters.
Oh, but one thing I noticed in the helicopter, the dude who's actually like hanging the dosimeter out of the helicopter door, he has like his top button of his radiation suit just unbuttoned. You can just see his skin. I'm like, dude, come on.
Doesn't it? I had a lot of thoughts about that this week. Is it sort of like the mockery that Fight Club makes of airplane safety precautions?
Kind of, yeah. At a certain point,
does it even matter? I wonder that. I don't know. See, I know very little about this type of radiation, acute radiation poisoning or exposure. I'm not even sure what it's called. But
ARS, acute radiation syndrome.
Aha. So I'm not sure how much a gas mask would help. I'm not sure how much. I mean, I guess it must a little.
I don't know what the material of those suits is made out of. Like, I don't know what repels radiation. I don't even fucking know.
Right? Is it keeping
lead,
the uranium from pummeling into your body? If that's even what it is. See, I don't even know. Radiation fallout. It's just nasty shit, man.
Yeah, but this is the moment we get with Legasov, being pissed, finding out about what the exclusion zone is and where it's going to be. Right.
And that's because he picks up on an element that was registered, I believe he says 200 kilometers away.
Yeah, cesium-137.
Not good. And he says it should be 30 kilometers wide, right?
That's it.
Or it's only 30 kilometers wide, and they're picking up on stuff 200 kilometers away.
That this will not be good enough, yeah.
I like a lot of, we see this a couple times in this episode, which is Sherbina saying, I don't know. Yeah. And he's being honest. You
absolutely.
Think, right? He doesn't know. And that's just because they're so insular. Like, there's so many insular unknowns.
Totally.
And like Asaf is like, is this just an arbitrary decision that's going to lead to what? How many lives? Mr. Career Party Man?
Right. And you got to imagine some of those choices, he talks about, it's like, is this just some arbitrary decision made by some, political apparatchik, some career party man? And Sherbina's like, I'm a career party man. Like,
Right.
That's me you're talking about. And you got to imagine part of this whole, this late stage in the USSR, very paranoid. They know things are going down. The KGB's on fucking overdrive in suspicion of everyone and everything, internal, external, all of it. You got to imagine that some of these decisions are coming from just this paranoid notion of, we can't let this information slip out, so we want to keep it to as few people as possible. So yes, we will let it be just some arbitrary decision by somebody much higher up and removed, trying to contain the spread of, well, truth for one. But yeah, like, it just ignores reality, and that's what the big theme of this episode is. Legasov being the man of science, like, you guys are just ignoring the fucking facts of reality. You can't make decisions based off of this.
And it's such a crazy, like, that historical backdrop can't be overstated. You know, the fall of the Soviet Union was a major, it has to be one of the craziest things I've ever lived through, right? I mean, it happened in 90, 91. So it's crazy for these guys to be thinking, like, in 4 or 5 years, life as they know it is just over.
Right.
Your country is going to become like, what, 10, 15 countries?
Exactly.
In a matter of not much time. And it's crazy to think about that. It's crazy to imagine just, in 5 years, there will be essentially 10 different United States. These 3 states will be here, these 4. I mean, what the fuck, man? That's a crazy thing to think about. And there's no way they don't see this now, like you're saying, like with the KGB being in overdrive, all of this Cold War nonsense going on, things going back and forth, and this thing slap right in the middle of it.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, more reading I do about the historical context of this, there's a lot of people saying that this particular strain on their government and their resources and everything happening was definitely one of the tipping points leading them towards destruction. Of, like, this was too much for them to handle at this point. I mean, they handled it, but at the same time, like, what a strain on your fucking resources and everything, and your reputation, your world power.
And that's the thing too, that, with that type of. And I like that we see it with this. We see that despite culture, human beings still there's still a streak of this desire for liberty within them, and we can see when things get really bad, the sort of looming apparatus of the state becomes less scary to them, right? That's why I love these minor guys. This is such a breath of fresh air.
Oh boy, they're so great.
Which we're going to get to in just a minute here. The next crisis is the temperature going up, I believe.
That is it. Yeah, this is, and Legasov is, basically makes the point of, well, means the meltdown has officially begun. Like, correct. The heat is actually starting to burn through the concrete.
It's the cladding on the fuel rods, meaning what? The meltdown has begun. The face, man, Skarsgård's face, just
so good.
So
just
stern.
A man, just so tired of bad news.
No shit, right?
Like all he gets all day long. Like, oh fuck,
the guy's got an iron chin.
But yeah, this is the beginning of reality setting in for Ludmilla. That this happy reunion, this things that maybe he's looking okay. She walked in on him playing cards with his other, friend. They were definitely burned, and they didn't look like they were having a great time, but they look like maybe they're recovering. The recovery's beginning, but in this moment, no.
Brutal, man.
She realizes how much worse it is. He's trying to just pull his own clothes off because they're just suffocating him, just in total agony. Fucking terrible.
Yep. It's brutal. The screaming and all that stuff. We just hear it's a horror movie. The hospital is a horror film.
Absolutely, man. And it's another just great narrative approach in this show, like this episode specifically, that we have Sherbina and Legasov, who are, they're in communication with Gorbachev. So we have the very bird's eye view of the disaster and what's being done to handle it, contain it, and solve the problems that it's presenting. And then we cut back to Ludmilla and Vasily for the human toll of, like, what this shit actually looks like, when it's happening to a human body.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great way to pace it.
But there are great shots here. I commend this shot of Gorbs, which is this really cool close-up of him. His whole body fills the frame, and his head's just sort of hanging, and he's got that pin on his lapel.
Oh, yeah. CCCP.
I just love it. And I love him just pouring over the American papers.
Exactly. So much about reputation and guarding the way they appear to the rest of the world. That's like of critical importance in their minds. And both, which is like we've talked about before, like that is true. That is actually important. But then at the same time, you're like, but is it as important as you think? Are you concentrating on that more than you should be?
Right. It's so much about it is being respected at best and maybe even feared. And
right.
Yeah, like he said earlier, our ability to project that power really is matters to how powerful. Like what was the quote in last episode? The perception of the power. Basically, it's that old adage.
Right. The perception of our power is our power.
Right. That's it. Good memory. But he's calling his field man, that Mr. Mr. Sherbina. What are they talking about here, Matt?
Well, this is when Sherbina's trying to give him some good news. And, well, we have successfully eliminated the possibility of, the steam explosion. We've drained all the tanks. That's good. There's some good news for you. But at the same time, now we're learning, he presents him with, Legasov estimates there's a 50% chance that the core is going to breach the fuel pad, the meltdown, and get into the groundwater.
Yeah.
Another horrible possibility.
Right. That was the China syndrome's main threat looming. The idea of a meltdown. It wasn't so much that it was going to go supernova. It was just more that it was going to melt down into the groundwater.
And just seep into everything, yeah.
Yep. And then you're pretty fucked.
Right.
Where does this groundwater go? Oh, the Pripyat River, which feeds into the Dnieper, the water supply for, 50 million?
50 million people, not including, livestock and crops.
No big deal, right?
No bigs.
So we're going to install a heat exchanger and lower the core temperature. No big deal. And to do that, well, we're going to need all of the liquid nitrogen in the Soviet Union.
Fuck.
To which Gorbachev's like, oh, all right.
Well,
and I like how he just says that whatever you need, you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's another one of these moments, too, where you can imagine that a little bit more of the reality on the ground has sunk in for Gorbachev, where he's like, well, fuck it. Like, if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do then. But, dude, that's another thing we got to talk about, too. The size, just the actual land mass and resource size of the Soviet Union. It was fucking massive. It was gigantic. And to just say, us, that one of the biggest countries in the world, a former empire, we're going to need all of the liquid nitrogen in the entire country. Get all of it right here and now. That's such an insane request. That's crazy. Massive.
I like how Legasov's kind of getting shot down here, but he starts in on if you mean when will Chernobyl be completely safe? Plutonium-239 is 24,000 year half-life. So maybe we just should know within our lifetimes. And as he's sort of firing back at Gorbachev, I just love watching Sherbina just put the phone down for a second. He's so annoyed.
Just like, fuck.
He's like, this guy has no idea how close he is to getting in major trouble with this guy.
Seriously.
But he was trying to tell him about the evacuation stuff, and Gorbachev just said, that's not why you're there. Do the thing that you're supposed to do, because the guy who made that call is doing the thing he's supposed to do.
Right.
But it's still that thing of, it's weird. It's almost like this reluctance to step outside of the assigned roles and the appeal to authority in that particular arena. It's really bizarre.
Totally. That's what's so contradictory, even in this moment where we see Gorbachev kind of acknowledging just the horrible reality of, okay, that's what the situation demands, all of the liquid nitrogen in the entire country, so be it. But then when he questions this decision about the exclusion zone, he's like, well, if he determined it, then he determined it. I don't want to think about it any more than that.
Right.
But that's, you got to think about it more than that, than just trusting some guy somewhere.
I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I couldn't tell you what episode, and it was definitely a couple of years ago, but it was not this World Cup, but the prior World Cup. I remember hearing about, the Netherlands or the Dutch football team, as it were, and they were comparing them to the South Korean football team. And they were doing this because some of these players play with each other outside of the World Cup when they're in leagues. Players from all over the world play all over the place. So you'll have, a couple of Italian players, an English player, Brazilian player, on the same team sometimes, depending on the league. And they were talking about a South Korean player, so much of the authority is based on the age and the length of time someone's been on a team, and you don't question that. And it's really fascinating. It's just this hierarchical thing. And I'm not a Korean cultural expert, so I couldn't tell you. I'm just telling you what was said on a fucking podcast about soccer.
Right.
Just to make that clear. And it was essentially this deferring to the authority of the most senior veteran player without question.
Right.
Whereas the Dutch are just all opinionated. They're like, no, you're wrong. It totally different. The understanding I was being led to believe is that you have to kind of have a thick skin to deal with the Dutch in that capacity, because they're just going to say, this is dumb. I think this is the wrong thing.
Right.
With no respect for your status. And I thought that's really interesting. And they said sometimes it would be a culture clash because you'll have a player on a team that's of a different culture, and they're trying to communicate, and the manager's from Portugal, this guy's from Italy, this guy's from Korea, this guy's from the Netherlands. And just thought that was really interesting. It actually made me think of this a little bit, this idea of Gorbachev himself is just saying, obviously we don't know if this was actually said. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know how accurate this dialogue actually is. I'm sure a lot of this is fictitious. But this idea of, no, you were there to do your thing. It's almost like he slated him into this category, which is seems like this compulsion of the Soviet state to do, and then you stay in your fucking lane, right?
Exactly.
It's pretty wild.
This is your role, and this role has very specific boundaries, and you don't step out of that or ask questions outside of that. That's it.
Right. And to be clear, that's not to say that South Koreans are lemmings and that the Dutch are a bunch of opinionated assholes with no respect. But there's definitely cultural norms there that would be challenging to get used to, right?
For sure.
So I know, man, I don't like the scene of these guys walking and feeding these dogs, because I know what's coming next week.
Coming.
They're just going to waste them all.
They allude to it in this episode.
Oh, they sure about it. They say it is a course of action.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yep. But he's describing what happens.
Oh, God.
What was your take on this?
I really liked it. I actually did really like it because I think, well, for one, in one sense, structurally, you have a character explaining what you are going to see. And also explaining what you've already seen, because you have that moment. If you're a viewer who's just kind of just taking it all in, you're not reading about it and reading about radiation exposure. You have that scene with Ludmilla and Vasily hugging, and you're like, okay, it still feels ominous because of this horrible fucking music, but maybe things are okay. And then when you hear Legasov go, yes, there's actually a latency period where things seem okay, and then they get much, much worse.
That's brutal.
You put it together in your mind like, oh God, that's what I just saw. That was the latency period. And when he goes on to describe, and I think this is another important thing. We've talked about this some before. I am of the opinion that you have to be pretty careful in certain movies, certain genres about the level of violence you do. There's got to be a reason that you're showing what you're showing. And sometimes it's so over the top, like fucking Kill Bill or Django. Like, that's stylized. It's not trying to be realistic, and it's almost like a comic book realm.
Sure, yeah, it's pulp.
But I actually think in moments like this, historical things, war things, you almost have a duty to be honest about the violence and the brutality, and to not clean it up, to not make it look better than it is. Like, to show that real people truly suffered, and this is what it was like, and this is why they suffered, I think is a part of the story and a necessary part of it. And I think him explaining it makes sure that viewers don't just see, the horrible sights of the bodies of these men that we're about to see and just be shaken by, ooh, that looks so bad, but to actually have a slight understanding, at least, of what is actually happening to them, and explaining that they can't even be given pain medication.
It's also warming you up for really intense, horrific imagery.
Right. Of kind of like brace yourself.
Brace yourself.
Get ready. But just to understand the process of it, that basically you are alive as you decompose. I mean, he says after, your bone marrow dies, your immune system, shuts down and just gives out, and your arteries and vessels just burst open, just come open like sieves, and all of your fluids just running out into the cavities of your body. Your soft tissues and skin and muscle just start to rot off of you. And he's like 3 days to 3 weeks, you're dead. And they can't even give you morphine.
Right.
That's just fuck, man.
Yeah, it's funny the way you describe this idea of this historical event in the decision to make sure the violence is shown, because that's probably one of the things that started the resurgence in World War II, which was Saving Private Ryan.
Right. Of seeing it with a much more realistic view.
When the Higgins craft opens the door and you hear the whistle blow, and those guys just start getting cut to pieces by the MG-42s, you go, holy shit, I've never seen anything like this.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had never seen anything like that ever.
No.
And
not
suddenly,
Platoon, not anything, yeah.
No, and suddenly Band of Brothers comes out, suddenly there's this resurgence in World War II history and films. It's funny how that happens, how World War II fell into our zeitgeists in the late 90s because of Saving Private Ryan, and then all of the things that followed from that. Obviously, you got your historical nerds and your buffs who have always been into it, and were into it long before that, obviously. But from the general public, it was an eye-opening experience, I think, and I think this is too. And I agree with you. I think it is pretty important to probably show this violence. I think same thing. I mean, if you want to show, you could say, despite the historical inaccuracy of Braveheart, I think that was another eye-opening moment where we go, what the fuck, man? Just chaos, hammers hitting faces and swords hitting people in the face. It was just like, what is happening? It's suddenly you go, okay, this combat is very brutal.
Right. It drains it of all that kind of mythos of we're
going to parry and I'm going to disarm you and I'm going to kick you in the face. It's just chaos.
It's just horrible, painful
chaos. It's not swashbuckling. It's warfare.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that's a good choice. And here, again, we get back to this. What are the other things I like about this moment is because these two men are talking about this, we know they're thinking about it. And it helps the audience start thinking about it. And I think that's important. Right? We always wonder what these guys are thinking. That's something we don't know. We only know in the way they perform. So obviously, whatever they're talking about, they're thinking about. So for them to start talking about this, I like that we know that Sherbina probably has a bit of a fear here. Like he's starting to think about the horrific nature of this. So this is another thing I think that this show has done for the past 2 episodes, which is very strong with Sherbina. Sherbina's getting information as we are. He's being told by Legasov, and we are seeing it when we go to hospital scenes. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's just a slick way to tell the story. It's almost like Sherbina's on this journey with us.
Right. And, I love the question he has, well, what about us? And he tells me, well, we haven't been exposed to as much of it, but we've still gotten a steady dose. So in time, cancer, it's probably going to come. If not cancers, other complications and sicknesses. We've got a couple of years, basically.
Yeah, it scrambles your DNA, man. I mean,
that's so insane. But Sherbina's reaction is like, well, I guess it seems like we got off a little lighter than some of the rest then.
No shit. Especially at Sherbina's age. I mean, he's not an old man by any stretch, but he's not a young man. I mean, he's got to be 60-something.
Right.
But
this is also our first glimpse of the KGB tale.
Awesome.
I've seen them before. It was that couple he lied to, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now I feel less bad about lying to him.
Yeah.
And actually, when you think back on it, dude, that just actually dawned on me. He probably made the exact right decision in that moment to lie to them because they were KGB trying to make sure information wasn't
for sure.
Out.
Yep.
So the fact that he was like, nope, everything's fine. They're like, that's what we wanted to fucking hear. Or else we would have followed you back to your room and shot you, probably. Or poisoned you. Fucking nerve agent.
Crazy.
Yeesh. Boy, them Ruskies love to poison people with nerve agents. God damn.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yikes.
Disappear into black van for re-education.
Going to rot your face off.
No,
because
you
Posted a political blog.
Media man said bad thing about Putin.
Time to die.
Nice knowing you.
Sin Seagal.
Oh, shit. Did I tell you that I listened to a podcast? I think I did. I think I did on last episode. It was, she was doing this Russian woman who lives in New York now. She was doing a documentary on the five Russians who came to Detroit Red Wings in the 90s. Maybe I didn't mention this in the last pod. If I did, I'm sorry.
I don't think so, no.
Okay, cool. So it'll be a very quick, brief story. The only reason I'm telling it is because she was talking about some of the cultural differences when she was younger, and she's fully adapted now. But she was saying she always thought people in America were dumb because they always were just smiling.
Yes, that's a big cultural difference. Yeah,
it is a huge cultural difference because she's like, they're smiling like idiots. But then I realized that's not what it is. But pretty crazy. Like, you don't see any smiles on this fucking show. Not a single one.
I think it might have been like a This American Life story or something about the very first McDonald's in post-Soviet Russia. And that was one of the biggest difficulties the trainer guy had, was to get the employees to smile. He's like, you got to all be smiling. And they were like, that's what stupid. That's like what, not quite right in the head people do. That's what dummies do in Russian culture. It's like, you look like a fool if you walk around smiling. He's like, but no, you got to smile when customers come in. It was like this big thing of like, no, I promise it's not about looking dumb. But that's like, that's why they always look so gruff.
I talked to a German guy once, and he was saying, people don't do polite laughing in Germany. Like,
I could totally imagine that.
People talk and they don't go, ha ha ha. Like
me constantly.
Yeah, well, whoever. That's hilarious, by the way. You're definitely not German. But
no.
Yeah, they don't do that. They don't use laughing as filler. Like, they don't do the nervous laughter thing. They laugh if something is funny.
Oh, tough audience. That's how you know your comedy's really hitting if you're a comedian. Get a bunch of fucking Germans to laugh.
Yeah, no shit, man.
Stone faces.
Yep, too funny. It's just similar to Russian, that just we're not going to walk around smiling,
like a fucking dumbass.
Have you lived here?
Nothing to smile about.
Anyway, let's talk about this meeting between these two, because this is great.
Oh yeah, man. This is she is going down the numbers, crunching numbers on her own. Like, this is basically, you got to imagine this is kind of off hours. They're supposed to be unwinding here, but she's just.
Is that how you say it?
What's that?
Komyuk.
Yeah, she is trying to figure out how it happened. Like, how did it start? Because so far, Legasov and Komyuk both have been drawn into it has happened. It's already happened. How do we mitigate the effects? How do we contain just the horrible violence of the disaster versus why did this happen and what caused it? And that you got to imagine for two, scientists, that's in the back of their mind the whole time of like, what fucking caused this?
Exactly. You just hear drawing an image of Sterling Archer. Spy. CIA man. That'll be on the Russian version. The Russian version, they'll draw like a Burt Reynolds looking guy with a mustache. Who is this man here?
It was American Pig.
That's funny, man. Why did it explode? And I worked over the numbers over and over and over, presuming the worst possible conditions in an RBMK reactor, and she came up with impossible.
Impossible. Yet it did.
Right. That's what I love. It's funny because that goes back to the Dietlov stuff. And that's one of the things we alluded to in episode 1, which was I don't have a contingency for my basement flooding 10 feet of water because that's just not happening where I am, right?
Right.
There's no tsunamis that's going to reach me here, knock on wood. It's not going to rain for 70 days, right?
Right.
So, and that's almost like Dietlov, like, well, that's not a thing. He can't even wrap his head around it. Obviously, there's denial there, but there's also that sort of blind trust in that it is an impossibility. It does not happen.
And see, that's the difference between them and guys like Dyatlov or the party guys. Where they run these numbers and go, well, see, it's impossible. Close this book, moving on. We'll think about something else, or we'll approach it from a different way, and that's that. But for these guys, for the scientists, they're like, no, it's impossible. So we think, according to our numbers, so we must not know something. That just means there's a gap we need to fill.
Yep. And she says, he says you need to go to Hospital 6 in Moscow and you need to interview the survivors, the control room survivors.
That's it. Because if we don't find out how this happened, it will happen again.
Right. Goody.
Hooray. Well, off to see the miners.
Off to see the miners. My guys, man. These are my guys.
So fucking cold, dirty.
I love them.
What's as big as a house, burns 20 liters of fuel every hour, puts out a shitload of smoking noise, and cuts an apple into 3 pieces? A Soviet machine designed for cutting an apple to 4 pieces.
Awesome.
So good.
Awesome.
That's the best vodka.
That is government to a T, as far as I'm concerned. that's the government the world over, dude. So funny. Giant, bloated, ridiculous thing that doesn't do the thing right it's supposed to do. It's fucking great. These
complicated Rube Goldberg machines with suits.
These guys all roll in, and I just love it. I love the blue collar like dudes, man. Like these guys are the shit.
Oh yeah, they fucking crush it in this episode, man.
Yeah.
But fuck yeah, the Prime Minister of Coal. Actually, it's definitely not his title.
So ridiculous.
Minister of Coal Industries, not Prime Minister.
There's a minister of everything. Does this guy not remind you of sort of like Ben Mendelsohn light?
Yes, I kept thinking that. I was like, he looks sort of like he's like Ben Mendelsohn's like younger brother.
Right. And I love Glukov, played by Alex Ferns. He was in a Bond film. He's Scottish. This guy, yeah,
he's got the look.
Yeah, he's been in a bunch of movies, but he played in River City, TV show. But he was in he's in a Bond film. I saw a picture of him, but I don't remember which I don't remember which one, sadly.
He looks like he could be a good like henchman, punching Bond in the face.
But yeah, this is awesome.
But, dude, these guys take such a different tack than any other character we've seen in this show so far. They are so different.
Yes.
And according to Craig on his podcast, the creator of the show, he was talking about how, obviously this is dramatized, the actual dialogue. He's like, but this is the attitude and the way coal miners in Russia acted, because their industry was so utterly necessary to keep Russia going. Like it's probably the single most crucial industry in the entire country. So they had leverage. They've got you can't just shove the coal miners around, and they fucking know it. Yeah. And they don't fucking let up. Yeah,
because they're providing electricity, right?
Exactly.
To the entire Soviet Union. And let me tell you, without it, you're fucked.
You're fucked. But fuck, this is so good. Where he's like, we need 100 men. You all need to get in the trucks and come with us. And that's that. And he's like, do you now? That's what you need, huh? Go ahead, start shooting. You don't got enough bullets to kill us all.
Dude, these rugged dudes, come on now.
Oh, fuck. Because
I like it. You know what I like about it? I like how Glukov, he just says, he doesn't say we'll kill you. He says, we'll just beat the crap out of you after you kill a bunch of people, and a bunch of us are still alive.
Exactly. Beat the living piss out of each of you.
And I'll tell you, I actually really like I like these guys tapping this guy and getting him full of the coal dust. And they're just kind of jostling by him, bumping him around, getting his clothes all dirty, getting his face dirty. It's interesting, it's...
Now you really look like the Minister of Coal.
I like it, man. I think it's a cool scene.
I think it's excellent.
He even smiles a little, right? That's
he does.
This tiny little smile.
Matthew Lewis left a great comment about that. He said, one of many great scenes in this episode, I like that the minister eventually broke a small smile, realizing that there was a level of camaraderie in their pats.
Sure.
The dust went from an insult to a badge of honor in a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point of at first it definitely starts as fuck you, pencil pusher boy. But then also at the same time, yeah, we understand that the job you're asking us to do is probably very necessary. Fuck it. We'll do the job and get it done. Right. Here we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that a lot. I do appreciate he was put in his place. And once he was put in his place, it's almost like they respected him for it a little bit,
Right.
I equate this to them tousling his hair a bit, right?
Right. Okay, you're the one in charge. Winky wink. We know. But we are still all in this together, actually. So
we got to look in on our doomed couple here.
Oh, God. The most brutal shit in this episode, man.
It's Vasily, right?
Yeah, Vasily. You know how I always remember his name? Because it's the same as Vasily Zaitsev,
Yeah,
the sniper from World War II.
That. I knew you were going to say that.
Fuck it. Love it. And I love that terrible movie, Enemy at the Gates. I don't give a shit.
Major Koenig, right? He was the German one.
Yeah.
Played by Ed Harris or some shit.
Oh, it's so good. I fucking love that movie.
Hilarious.
I know it's not good. Just let me have this.
Snipers.
Love it.
But he's still he's very cognizant. They're having a discussion. They're sort of enjoying each other's company, I guess you could say.
Right. And he's telling her, they told you not to touch me. It's not safe.
Yep. They have a moment with the sunglasses. We get a little laugh here.
Yeah. This is such a nice little moment of, what more do you have right here? What more can you do? He can't leave this room. He can't leave the bed. So she starts looking out the window and describing, all of Moscow. Because I take it from this that both of them have never made it to Moscow before. Right. And he was even saying, he's like, I told you I'd make it here and get you to Moscow so you could finally see it. And she's describing, seeing all the famous sights in Moscow. And even though she can't actually see it, I love that we cut to the view of the actual window and it's just, the side of the building. Like she can't actually see these things. But she's like, oh yeah, you can see St. Basil's and the Kremlin, the Red Square, all of it. It's right here. It's so fucking sad, man.
Yeah. He kind of looks like Nick Cage right now.
Just a little bit.
He does. He looks kind of like a Nick Cage character to me right now. I don't know why.
I could see in 1980s Nick Cage doing this.
I'm a vampire. So our girl goes to see our man Dyatlov.
Ooh, boy.
Looking good. Your mustache, bro.
Oh, just all gone. Jesus Christ.
Well then, comrade nuclear physicist, beat it. If you don't have caviar and butter.
If you don't have a butter and caviar sandwich, get the fuck out of my room.
Yep.
Good old Dyatlov.
Yep. He ain't changed a bit.
So he ain't talking.
You think acute radiation syndrome would humble him, but nah. But it's
same old.
I do like that the scene serves a purpose, and that's to see him physically. You go, wow.
Right. He's looking pretty rough. Not as bad as the next guys, but That's why I like the scene, because it's sort of wetting you up. It's setting you to now. It's almost becomes a race against time, right? She's like, shit. Right, and it's true. As she goes through in the sequence of her seeing these guys and interviewing them, they're all worse and worse and worse, and it kind of provides a almost like chronological deterioration of this is how it's going to progress.
Yep. So the miners get to Chernobyl.
They do indeed. And Sherbina has so many great lines about the miners here.
Don't lie to them.
You spent time with the miners. My advice, tell the truth. These men work in the dark. They see everything.
Yeah, it's a great line.
You're not going to bullshit them with our normal shit.
We need extra level special KGB lies for this one.
We need serious high dosage lies.
We need some of those Chairman Sharkov lies, man. Come on. That guy's menacing as shit. Can't wait to talk about him.
Oh yeah.
But I love Glukov just waltzing in here. I love this. I love this guy's. I don't know his. What am I trying to say? It's just the
fucking chutzpah.
Just look at him.
Just fucking look at him, dude. When he comes in and sits down and he just puts the mask down, I was like, "Does this even work?" And he's like, "Well, to an extent." And he just goes, and then just points to his pack of cigarettes, and he's like, "Oh, of course," and just gives him one. Doesn't even ask, just points. Give me a fucking cigarette. This
is like the Ron Jeremy body guy, He's got that sort of like big guy swagger to him.
Exactly.
It's really funny.
And his first question really is, well, what's the job? Just fucking lay it out. What are we doing?
Yep. Well, here's what we're going to do. You have to get at this from underneath it. What's above that? Oh, the core of the nuclear reactor, which is melting down. No big deal. What? And I like how he sort of physically is like, wait, like melting down into the ground. Literally.
Yeah.
Is it going to fall on top of us? No. You got 6 weeks.
Until that happens, possibly. He lays it out for him. Mentions of where we're going to have to go in. And I love just how incisive his questions are. I mean, Sherbina's right about these guys see through all of it. Like, Legasov is not lying to them here at all.
Correct.
At the same time, he's not laying out all of the danger because he's like, you're going to have to start here, 150 meters from the actual site and start digging in. And I love how he's just like, well, so the site that we're, before we break ground, we might be shielded by some of the radiation by the Earth itself once we're under it, but where we break ground, we're still only 150 meters from the core, so we're not protected. And he's like, well, yeah.
Right.
Like, because
they don't have time to approach it from further away. They're not going to make one of those, like, El Chapo tunnels, right?
Yeah, right.
They don't have time for that shit.
Tunnel. Oh, man.
Take it easy, bros. I'm out of here.
See ya.
Did you see that famous video of him just stepping off camera that they had in his cell and disappearing underground? It's the craziest thing ever.
I know he's like a monster and all, but fuck, that is badass.
That's crazy.
Like,
he's just like, goodbye. He descends into the floor like a vampire. Creep.
Just fucking breaks out of prison.
Goodbye.
Fucking hell.
So yeah, that's the problem. With time being a factor, they can't dig from further away. They got to go 150 meters from, I guess you'd say, ground zero.
That's it.
But the questions are asked by Glukov. Well, we're not underground now. We're here now. So I'm guessing we've already got some problems. He's just saying, I mean, you're not going to bullshit Glukov.
No.
Right.
And I love one of his first points that he brings up. He's like, all right, we're going to need more men, like 400, and we're going to have to start working around the clock. And then he's like, well, you can start in the morning. And Glukov is the one who goes, nope, we start right now. I don't want my men here 1 second more than they need to be.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And he fucking leaves on the line of when he holds up the mask. If these worked, you'd be wearing them, and just tosses it back to him. Off to work.
It's funny when we think about this movie and we think about the Soviet Union at the time and we think about the politics surrounding all of this at the time and the deception and all of this jazz. And we one of the things we haven't talked a lot about in this series is leadership, because there has been none to really speak of that we would call sort of classically, in quotations, good leadership. Except with this guy.
Oh, yeah, man.
He leads from the front.
Exactly.
He's honest. He's going to get the job done. You're not going to... He's not one of these party scum that you're going to seduce away and he's going to be in the mansion while his men toil. That's just not going to happen. And he is a true leader of men. And that's one of the things I love about this Glukov character. I think he's great. He's very refreshing. And that's what I mean when I say he's a refreshing character. The miners are a refreshing sort of injection into this story, and I think it comes at the precisely best time. And I say that because of the Ludmila and Vasily story, which is our sort of B scenes in this, is we get to see something positive, something that has a bit of levity, something that we can wrap our heads around these blue collar guys a little bit, and not just get pummeled with the Ludmila Vasily bad news stuff.
Right. It's true. It's good. And there's something to root for with these guys. Of they are here on a job that, like the divers, is incredibly dangerous, but you also know they're a little more shielded. There's a little more hope with them, and because of just who they are, you're like, I want these guys to fucking make it out okay. Like this is the closest thing we're gonna get to like a hero's journey in Chernobyl.
And what's another interesting thing about the Glukov character, and this is just the way, maybe because I'm a Westerner, I respond to leadership, but you feel confidence immediately with Glukov.
Yeah.
Like you feel a chance. Whereas every other time, like, I don't trust what these guys are saying. We're not getting the truth. We don't know. They're not doing it. It's with Glukov. That's why his crew hums the way it does, right?
Right.
He inspires. And I think that that's very important. And that's one of the things that I just thought was so great about this character and this whole introduction of these miner guys.
Oh, absolutely. And also, I mean, in this next scene, like one of the best parts about it is that he fucking advocates for his boys right in front of his boys. He calls out, I guess it's the colonel or the general nearby. Yeah. He's like, hey, we need fans. Hey, you.
Yeah, that guy's a tough customer too. He drove the truck, right?
He's exactly.
I think it's Pikolov or something.
Right. He comes up to him and tells him it's 50 degrees down there, which that's 50 degrees Celsius, which I'm pretty sure in Fahrenheit is close to like 120, 125 Fahrenheit. Yeah. So it's fucking unbelievable. That, when he said that, and I looked up how much that actually, the temperature of that was, reminded me of this one time where the only time I've ever worked in that temperature was when I was helping a buddy of mine's HVAC business installing air conditioning units inside of the attics of these apartment buildings that were getting renovated, like 3-story apartment buildings. Brutal. Oh my God, dude. And it was me and just this one other dude, and we would go up there, work on it, and fucking laying out the pipe and putting fucking all of the piping into the AC unit and just getting it ready. But we could only work 5 minutes at a time. You would just get soaked in sweat. Yep. And we were both working fucking shirtless up there because it was like you had no choice. You come back down the ladder, drink a bunch of water, sit down there for a couple minutes. All right, go back up, do 5 minutes more work. Took fucking forever. We installed, I think, 3 of them. Oh man! And we had a little mobile, like a thermometer thing that we could just poke up in there and see what the temperature was. And one of them was close to like 130. It's fucking brutal. It's almost a
sauna.
Oh God!
Yeah, I've done a couple of those too. I did once with my old man. I remember doing insulation work in an attic.
Oh God! Oh,
and that sucks because you don't want to take your shirt off. It's light.
No.
The good news is you're not doing a lot of heavy lifting. It's just itchy as shit.
Oh, so
in the summer. And then, of course, any kind of roofing job in the summer is just totally for the birds. That's where you got to start as early as possible in the morning. If you're doing a roof, you're on the roof by 7:15 p.m. A.m. Excuse me, 7:15 a.m. But yeah, you're right. 50 Celsius is 122.
Ooh, fuck.
That is brutal conditions.
It's unbearable,
and there's no airflow down there.
Right, and he's saying we can't work with the masks, we can't work without them because we can't breathe. We need fans. And this is where, the colonel is saying, for your own good, no fans. We can't kick up dust because that's not just dust. That's fucking irradiated dust. We cannot risk you getting that level of exposure.
Yep.
So you're just going to have to work in this fucking sweltering hellhole.
Here's another word I want to use to describe. There's many emotional states you could use to describe this show. One of them would not be inspired until the arrival of Glukov.
True. That's a very good point.
You never quite ever feel inspired.
Right. I feel like you can admire the bravery.
Sure.
Especially if the divers, I'm like, holy shit, if those guys didn't get, the fucking Russian equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize, like holy hell.
Yep, absolutely.
The bravery involved in these is it's stunning, but it's not hopeful.
There's no question about the heroics involved. No question.
Oh yeah.
So our girl goes to see Tuptanov, right?
This is him, Tuptanov. And he's looking pretty rough.
Man, this is brutal.
Good Lord. And I mean, he's still, again, he's looking much worse than, what's that?
He's still cognizant, right?
He's cognizant. He looks worse than Dyatlov, but, he can keep his eyes open. He's talking to her. Tells her his name and his official title, like we were saying, that he was 25 years old, senior reactor control chief engineer. He says it with pride. This is his, title that he earned, hopefully.
Right. Absolutely. And she starts asking him some questions. What does she learn from him?
Well, she learns that they did press basically the reactor shutdown button to try and to basically kill switch the whole thing. And that didn't work.
Right.
Or if anything, it may have even kicked off the chain reaction from the way it sounds.
Right. I love that he says he wants to tell.
Yeah, I want to tell.
I bet he's been told to tell nobody. I'm sure he's already been visited.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, as we come to find out soon, the KGB's already tailing Komyuk.
Yep. The AZ5 button or whatever. I love this moment of humanity where his nose just starts leaking blood and she sops it up.
Right. It's such a good moment.
Man.
And she's still being very careful because, she is a scientist. She's keeps her face behind the glass, her gloves and everything on. But it's still a very human moment of, I'll help you. I'll get that.
That's why I love this moment. So that's what makes you feel the dangers that Ludmila faces in a few moments here. When you see how cautious I keep forgetting her name. I'm terrible with her name. It's a weird one.
It's a weird one. Yeah. And of course, the one with a fictional name is the hardest.
Komyuk.
But I butchered this. Oh, Komyuk.
Komyuk. But man, that guy getting wheeled out. Oof, he looks so bad.
Oh, it looks so bad.
They look like monsters, man. It's really fucking crazy.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Because I mean, it's just their entire body, head to toe.
Yep. And this nurse is trying to tell Ludmila, listen, you have to take caution here. He's not Vasily anymore. He's something else. That's a harsh thing to say.
That's incredibly harsh.
He means he's a werewolf. Right.
Like, you're saying he's not a person anymore? Jesus.
Right.
But at the same time, in a way, she's trying to say that, yeah, you can't think of him that way. And not in the fullest sense, because it's like you can't just behave around him the way you always have. Like, he is literally dangerous to be around. And it's not his fault.
She goes about it in a weird way, but that's basically what she's saying.
Right.
But I like how she levels with Ludmila. Like, listen, there's a lot of people here. Do you understand? Like, there's a bunch of people just like him in this condition here. And that we are doing everything we can, because obviously in this moment, the only thing that matters to Ludmila is Vasily, and that makes sense. That's humanity. That's human beings, especially in that moment
where he's just suffering so much, and there's nothing you can do for him.
Yeah,
and like that's a big part of this too, of knowing she presses so hard, probably obviously not fully understanding all of the danger and the effects of radiation, how it works. I mean, who of any of us know all of that? But at the same time, fully understanding that there's nothing I can do for him other than be here, to just my presence, and to not let it, she says it. She's like, I don't want him to die alone. Right. Like, she fully understands he's going to die. Like, she's not, deluding herself, but she's like, I don't want him to die alone. That's the only thing I can offer. Let me offer that.
Yes, absolutely. And boy,
God,
he looks so bad.
Oh, it's
truly horrific. It's truly horrific.
And I feel like they do of this.
She doesn't flinch, man. Them Russian chicks are tough.
But I love the fine line this episode manages to balance on, of not gratuitously overshowing these guys and just like, staring at the hideous violence that's happening to their body, but also not shying away from it. Like, we're still going to have to look at it, because Ludmila had to look at it. And this is what they all had to experience.
It's not exploitation. It's
not
a
at
perfect balance. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
I mean, he's man, it is really hard to look at.
I mean, his nose has gone black. I mean, the skin, his entire skin is just dying. It's just coming off slowly. But she tells him, she tries to give him this little bit of good news here of, we're having a baby.
Yep.
You're going to have a child.
Yep.
And he does have a slight smile.
I'm not going to lie, kind of concerned for that kid around all these irradiated people. And
right.
I'm a little nervous about that. I'm guessing Chernobyl's not going to be like, yay, that's the final shot, like the baby, and yay, it's fine. I don't think that's going to go right. I don't think there's any happiness at the end of this.
My Spidey tragedy senses are tingling.
Yeah,
that's
man.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Well, fire goes out, so some good news, right?
That's it.
And our guy, Sherbina, he's like, listen, I'm going to break out the Campari. What is he drinking? I don't even know.
Vodka. Come on, babe. You know it's vodka.
Is that what it is in that little glass?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I could be.
I thought it was carbonated for a second.
Oh, maybe? Well, maybe. Fuck, I don't know.
No, it isn't. Vodka. It's not. It's got to be vodka.
Vodka.
And, crazy, huh? The models are going to get done in 4 weeks, so they're going to be 2 weeks ahead of schedule. This is awesome. Everything's going great. Have some of this. I know the job isn't over, but let's try a little bit. I like that we're starting to connect these men.
Yeah. But at the same time, Legasov is still just head in hands. I still see, that's what I was talking about earlier. It sucks.
He has the curse of the knowledge, right?
Exactly. He doesn't even get these moments, these little islands of hope before you learn how much is yet to come, all the burdens that are still going to have to be overcome. Legasov knows them all. He's at least a lot more than Sherbina. So it's even these little victories, he's still but then this thing, and then this thing, and then this thing. No joy.
No joy. I love the next scene with the miners, and it's so hilarious, man. There's nothing more Russian than a miner dude with a hammer in one hand and his dick just swinging.
Just swinging, covered in dust.
He's like, doing what I must. Bro, I told you it was freaking hot down here. We shed our skivvies to get to work.
Dude, how? I mean, this is the most gangster shit in the world. He's like, we're mine like our fathers did.
Dude.
Fucking damn, dude. You wouldn't give us fans? It's too hot for clothes. We're digging the old way, the way our fathers mined.
Yep.
We're still wearing the fucking hats.
Yeah, I love it.
I love how basically the soldier, came in and told Sherbina and Legasov about the miners, we got to address this. They're all naked, but basically he's like, "What are you gonna fucking do about it, man? We're doing the job, and it's hot as shit down there." And they all just kind of like, "Yeah, you're right." Like just kind of back off. Like, what are you gonna say to them? Really?
Mm-hmm. You think Russia will show this part? You know how they love any possibility of gay stuff.
Exactly. They're so about it.
God damn.
But dude, and also right here, man, I gotta say the brutal honesty from Sherbina, I actually really respect.
Right.
When
Me too.
Glukov is like, so after all this, are they going to be looked after? And Sherbina's just like, I don't know. Right. Like, I'm not gonna blow smoke up your ass, man. I don't know.
That was one of the points. That's what I was talking about a little earlier when I said he doesn't know some of these answers that are crucial, and it just goes to show you, man. Everybody's sort of, it's all compartmentalized, so to speak.
Yeah. And fucking Glukov, just, you don't know. And just turns around, back to work.
We go back to the interview, I guess you'd say. And she says, why didn't you initiate the emergency shutdown when your I think it was the wattage doubled? Why don't you press the AZ, British as shit, AZ5 button? I reported the increase to Akimov, and he pressed the button.
That's it.
And she's saying, that's not possible. Well, you also said that this reactor meltdown is not possible, but here we are.
But here we fucking are.
I swear,
and I love how adamant he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw him do it. I told him to do it, and I watched him do it. And he was talking about, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's when it exploded. That's what he says, or so he thought.
Right. And the big clue here that we learn is about like you said, the power jumping from 200 megawatts to 400 megawatts, which is way higher than it's ever supposed to be.
Right. For sure. And she's going to go see Akimov.
Oof. And this one, we don't even see, man.
Just his voice. I pressed it before the explosion. Before, she wonders. She's taking a lot of notes. KGB would love to get their hands on that.
Oh, boy, they sure would.
Why would that happen? Right? She wants to know. I shut it down. I pressed AZ5.
God, I mean, what's also so dark about this scene is, he's sitting here suffering. Like, he's in the middle of his own horrible agony. And what is he also constantly ruminating on? The guilt of, I did everything right. How did that happen? I did everything right. Like, he's still agonizing over feeling like he failed. Like, I caused this. I fucked it up. Even though he's trying to tell himself he did everything right. Yep. Even as he is just decomposing and suffering and, like what Legasov said, just unimaginable pain. That's what he's thinking about.
Yeah, I love the decision not to show Akimov. And I love that because we need to see Vasily and we need to see somebody in the hospital. We need a Kamyak to be able to see somebody, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we didn't need to see it more than once. And, we don't need to do the movie thing where, there's a line of beds of everyone screaming, right? That's a little much. It's not necessary. I like the more personalized version of the telling of this story this way. It's a lot more intimate. It's a lot more real.
Definitely.
And that's just the way it goes. As we zoom the lens out, our I guess you'd say our empathy sort of starts to get confused, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like there's something about the shock of seeing a room full of a bunch of people wounded and suffering, but you can't attach a lot. I mean, you don't understand their stories. You don't understand what happened. I mean, obviously you still feel awful for them. You feel sympathy, but here we get these much closer, intimate looks, this understanding of what Vasily is losing and what he's gaining. I get the knowledge of I'm going to have a child, but at the same time, I'm not going to see them. Like, we get those more intimate sadnesses and, happinesses.
Yeah, personalities attached to it versus just the shock and horror of screaming wounded people.
Right.
conversations, regrets, as you pointed out, him considering I did everything right. But Our Lady Kamyuk, she gets arrested by the KGB.
Oh, indeed.
Into the van.
After spotting Ludmilla, touching Vasily and saying, "Why did you let her in that room?
Right.
Inside the plastic? This is insane." And that's when she's like, "I'm going to tell it. People are going to know about this." And KGB, who's going to know? Who's going to know about it?
What are you talking about, bitch?
Not good.
And we go back to Moscow, and we have fix your tie, Sherbina tells him. I love that moment. I just love how this is just not like a soft Serena.
Right, yeah. Fix your tie. Need to look good.
Yeah. And talk to me about this next scene.
Oh, boy. Well, for one, I love the massive painting in the background. Ivan the Terrible and his son. Where I don't remember the entire story, but I know that he killed his own son. Like, we hit him with a cane, and that's him in the moment holding him, regretting killing his own son. That's the looming image over this fucking meeting.
Yippee.
Hooray. But yes, this is, again, Sherbina trying to at least upfront the good news. The fire is out. The helicopter sorties have sorted that problem out. There's no more risk of a thermal explosion. Everyone and all of those people and everyone in this room are to be commended. A round of applause.
Right. Just as a point of order, historically, Ivan the Terrible, the image is of Ivan the Terrible killing his son.
Yeah, that's all I was saying.
Oh, okay. I thought you said his son killing him.
No. Yeah, he killed his son.
Got it.
With his cane.
Ivan the Terrible died via stroke while playing chess. That's crazy.
Ooh.
Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan. Yeah, it's November 16th, 1581, that piece of art.
I've actually always really liked that. Like, even before I understood, even before I knew what that painting was of, I remember seeing it, and just the expression on his face is like really powerful. I just always remember, like, there are some paintings where, old Renaissance paintings, lots of people just kind of with like languid, unemotional looks on their faces while they pose like fucking angels or whatever. And in this one, this guy, his eyes is just wide open in terror. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a shocking expression. I've always remembered that painting. But boy, what a bummer of a painting to have it right before your fucking meeting room.
Just so you know, in 2013, an open letter was sent to the Russian Culture Ministry by Orthodox Christian activists. It alleged that the painting was offensive to Russians as it presented an untrue, distorted view of history. The letter asked the Russian Minister of Culture, Jesus Christ, Vladimir Medinsky, to remove it from public display.
Ooh, interesting.
And Tretyakov Gallery objected.
Good. Fucking taking down art. Jesus.
It's been vandalized a little bit, that painting.
Weird.
I'm sure those guys ended up fine who did that.
True.
Oops. Anyway, I'm sorry. Let's talk about the logistics here. You recognize one of these men?
Fucking A, baby.
Dude.
The Witch Father.
Yeah.
That voice. I remember for a
Lord,
moment.
Christ, save me from salvation, Christ Lord.
Corruption.
Corruption in my own home.
Dude, I remember seeing him and I was like, oh, that guy's kind of familiar. And the second he opened his mouth, I was like, oh, shit, that's the dad from The Witch. That fucking unmistakable voice. Oh, it's so good.
I had seen him in the credits before, but I hadn't seen him up to this point. Or if I did, I didn't remember.
Yeah, I think he's been in this, in prior meetings, but I don't think he's spoken until this episode.
Got it. Well, the Soviet people have risen to the challenge. Everyone in this room should be commended. Let's have a round of applause. We're making progress here. Clap, 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 clap.
When Legasov, the fucking party pooper, has to pipe up again.
Sherbin is lucky. He's like, yeah, I give great news for clapping. You give bad news.
This is going to be good cop, bad cop routine. I'm the good cop. You go tell them that horrible shit nobody wants to hear.
Have you seen my son play a vampire in True Blood?
Even I think it's hot.
I mean, I get it.
Like, I get it, There's a reason he was picked to be Tarzan. Looks good without a shirt.
I gave him that body. My genes. Uncorrupted by radioactive isotopes.
Oh fuck!
I love how he panders to the KGB though. We've done our best to protect the security interests of the state. Oof.
God.
And everyone just looks at Charkov. We've hoped we have lived up to the highest standards of the KGB. You have.
You'll have.
That's just like the perfect representation of what I imagine a KGB guy looks like, man. Just older, completely stone-faced guy with glasses to make him even seem a little unthreatening. Probably fake glasses. Make him seem frail. And he's just sitting here like, I have your friend in a KGB prison. It's fine.
Exactly.
Everything's under control.
But I love how Legasov delivers this stuff. All right, he is true. That is the good news. The immediate danger has been, avoided, but now the long war must begin. And starts to talk about just the enormous amount of radioactive debris, approximately 2,600 square kilometers.
Yippee!
Yo, boy! And this is when he really dives into did you notice how he doesn't say our current exclusion zone is not good enough and we got to do better. He just goes ahead and says,
yep,
that's how big the area is contaminated and we must make sure that we evacuate that entire area. So contradicting the already officially made decision without outright saying so.
And he's nervous as shit.
Yeah, man. That's the fucking dance he has to do.
Mm-hmm. But this is when he says, listen, we're talking, we need to destroy everything. Animals, topsoil, trees. We can't have wind pick this stuff up. We cannot spread the corruption.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, it is, again, one of the things about the show that keeps impressing me too is that some of the biggest jaw drop moments and shocker moments I've had are Legasov talking. Legasov talking about what the situation really is almost, and this is all certainly Jared Harris's performance, which is, fucking stellar. He wears so much guilt and burden and apprehension as he gives this, but he doesn't flinch in giving it and telling the truth as it needs to be told. But at the same time, this is the most shocking stuff where he has to lay out, this is how profound this is. Because that's what, we talked about, I think on the last episode, I think a lot of, ordinary people's impression of when they hear the word nuclear or nuclear accident, nuclear disaster, they think, you look over your shoulder and you're like, well, I don't see a mushroom cloud, so I guess it's at least somewhat okay. Yep. And him having to lay out of how the problem is so much harder to pin down than that, harder to identify, and honestly, a lot bigger, spreading out so much further than you really expect.
This kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversations, which is this idea of this sort of invisible death.
Right.
Because if there's one thing a nuclear bomb is invisible. It's very visible. It's very obvious what's happening to anything nearby, which is, disintegration. It's utter annihilation. It's the people on the outskirts of that really have the invisible slow death. It's brutal.
Yeah. Shit, dude. He talks about we're going to have to rip up the top layer of Earth for 100 square kilometers and bury it underneath itself so that, the rain and the wind doesn't pick up dust and run off the dirt, irradiated dirt to more places. We have to literally flip the ground upside down for 100 square kilometers.
Oh, and by the way, we also need 750,000 men in 3 years for the, quote, liquidation, end quote.
So much, man. It's just not even to talk about just the danger of the whole situation, which by now is fucking obvious. We've seen all the fallout and the people, dying. But at the same time, just coordinating the fucking logistics to handle this. The amount of people that are going to have to be involved and all planned and coordinated every single thing that they're doing and making sure they're doing it correctly. God, the manpower behind all of this is just, it shakes your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's pretty intense, man. It's funny. One of the things you hear about with I guess it may be nuclear weapons or even just military ordnance is the idea of air burst versus ground burst. Air burst contaminates less of the actual ground, but it destroys more of a wider area because it's not absorbed by the earth so much. Like a bomb blows up right before it hits the ground kind of thing.
Exactly.
I think Hiroshima was an air burst bomb.
I think, they both were, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Pretty sure.
Yeah. But I always thought about that. the idea of contamination is so much worse when it's, into the very earth.
Right. Just for so long, too.
It's wild.
But this is also when we get that line from our boy. How much time? How many men will you require? Fucking voice.
1 million in 3 years. No big deal.
No bigs. Round them up. Get it going.
Oh, great. And deaths? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. So, and Gorbachev just has to say, okay, begin, I guess.
Go ahead. Get started.
And, I like they purposely show Gorbachev sort of reacting, like there's some humanity there, and they just show Charkov just staring there with shark eyes.
Oh yeah. Shark-off with shark eyes.
I like this confrontation in the hallway. My associate was wrestling. And I love this. Like, I think the stereotypical thing here is, if you wrote this as an action movie, the stereotypical spy thing here is for Charkov to menace Legasov into shutting his mouth.
Right.
But instead he just plays ignorant. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so much more creepy and spy-like to me.
It's all just equivocation, talking without really talking. You're like,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And he's
No
like, well,
kidding.
you're the deputy chairman of the KGB. You must know about this. He's like, yeah, because I'm the deputy. That's why I don't have to bother with arresting people anymore.
Yeah,
like, I don't know about all this day-to-day shit. What are you talking about?
He's just fencing. I love it. Parry, thrust. Yep. I don't worry about such things. Yeah. And then he goes to leave. But you are bothering with having us followed. And that's when Turbina's like, no, let's leave. I love that. You've heard stories about us. When I hear them, even I am shocked. But we are not what people say. I love that. I think that's really cool writing. Now, I don't know if Charkov is a real guy. I don't know if the U.S. knew who the head of the KGB was. Maybe they did. I don't know. But
I'm pretty sure, but I haven't looked it up.
You did look it up?
I know I said I haven't.
I haven't either. But I love how he just says we're a circle of accountability. People following us, people following them, people following me. Everyone's being followed. It's accountability. It's nothing personal, basically, is kind of what he's saying.
A circle of accountability.
Yep.
We're all spying on each other. We're all making each other equally terrified and paranoid at all fucking times.
Old Russian proverb, trust but verify.
Now that I actually do like.
And the Americans think that Ronald Reagan thought that up. That's hilarious. But can you imagine? And then he tries to leave again, right? It was very nice speaking with you. And finally, man, Legasov, I like that. I need her. I mean, he's pleading.
Yeah.
And that's when he just says, cool, are you going to be accountable for her? Which suddenly means he's admitting as much.
Right. And just pointing out that, basically saying, if anything she does that we don't like, that falls on you now. Mm-hmm. That's basically what he's saying. He's like, cool, yeah, you're going to be accountable for her. That means your head's on the chopping block. Don't fuck up.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about him sitting with her, because this is awesome.
Oh, it's so good.
Commissar. Is that Commissar Manuel? Commissar. Is there a fucking spy in our chat? I think Charkov is a fictional character. Yeah, okay, dude. Whatever you say, Commissar. It's probably a lion. That's probably Charkov himself. Ban! Quick! Ban him! Suddenly my power goes out in my house. Oh, what the fuck?
Oh, shit. I hear boots.
I like this dialogue between these two. This is great.
Oh, yeah. I thought I was stupid.
Yeah. I like this. You are who you are, and you can't let this go, despite which is clearly a danger to you.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're sitting
outside
here in
of
a KGB cell.
I mean, that's dangerous, man. That's a much more immediate threat.
Right. And this is kind of where I can even just feel the show pivoting from the disaster to the cover-up within these moments of this is now the danger characters like Legasov and Komluk will have to deal with of we're the ones trying to get to the bottom of this and speak truth to power, and power doesn't like it. That's the direction we're starting to go now. We're going to have to get into why this happened, and that is a story that the Soviet Union is not going to want to get out.
Yeah. Viktor Chebrikov. Viktor Mikhailovich Chebrikov. Chairman of the Committee for State Security. And look at his picture. Holy mackerel. He looks just like him.
Oh my God, he does. Wow.
Yep.
Viktor Shebrakov.
He is, not much known. One little paragraph and a half about him. Go figure.
That sounds about right, yeah. Yikes.
Yeah.
I have seen many men die.
Clearly based on this cat, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, KGB from 82 to 88. Gee, think he had anything to do with Chernobyl, keeping quiet about Chernobyl?
No, surely not.
Awesome. Anyway.
But yeah, this is basically when they're talking about that we're going to have to pursue this no matter what. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have to be involved in these decisions where I'm essentially ordering people to their death, but we have to solve it. We don't have a choice. And I love how he's not even talking about the choice there of obeying authority or trying to, just do their job. He's talking about getting, we have to obey our like moral obligation to the truth.
Yeah. And this is the big reveal to Legasov about the AZ5 button. They both confirmed that they pressed it.
Both of them. And I love how she says it. She's like, I would have normally chalked that up to delusion or their bad memory or them trying to cover for their own mistakes.
Yep.
But they both confirmed and they were adamant.
Yeah. And this kind of shocks Legasov into this moment of sort of distracted silence as she's saying, they both confirmed it. And right. And she says she believes them.
Right.
And that's when he says, well, then you need to pursue it.
Yeah, no matter what. And, I think the implication there being that if they were running a routine safety test and they did everything correctly and pressed the shutdown button when it was supposed to be pressed, and this was the outcome, we have so many other RBMK reactors that will probably be up for safety tests. And this could very much happen again.
Right. And she's going to go back to the hospital and interview them again, which is clearly dangerous. Right back into the mouth of the lion.
Oh, it's so terrifying.
Yeah,
but that's what they have to do. They're a scientist pursuing the truth.
Yep. And we see the troops coming.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep. Doing their interrogation thing or moving thing, getting people rounded up thing, and I believe this episode end with this really insane mass grave.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where it's like it looks so cold as if it's almost like, I feel like if you could take it in the least charitable way of like, this is some like cold Soviet engineering of like, we're just going to dump them here. We're not going to make a big to-do of their graves. It's part of hiding the truth. But I think in a lot of ways they were actually so irradiated. It's like, we might as well just bury them together because we're going to have to seal them all. Yeah. Like it's that bad.
I kind of chuckled a little. I was like, you couldn't wait for the cement mixer to roll in after they disperse? Holy shit, man.
I mean, there is, people want to stay to see it be fully covered, they watch the dirt go in, I guess.
Like, yeah, sure. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, fuck.
There's just that fucking dude in his like jumpsuit smoking
concrete
a cigarette.
Voice.
Get the fucking concrete on there.
There's a big load.
Good government contract, though.
Question. As you listened to the companion podcast, were some of the images, the photographs being held, real people?
Oh, as far as the ones they were holding at like the funeral?
Yeah.
I don't think they got in. I don't think they said anything about that, whether or not.
Curious.
But they did say that.
I know one of them is the actor, but the other one I wasn't sure about. There's two.
Okay.
There's two photos. One's clearly Vasily, so obviously it's an actor. I didn't know if there was a little like shout out, like family pictures
of real people. Yeah. That would have been an interesting choice. But
no, man, the cement mixer coming over the hill is just brutal.
So brutal, man. And just to see the process again, showing us the terror, the magnitude of what happened to these guys, these already poor dead men, and that the terror of what's happened to them is still not over. Like, we have to wrap them in plastic. We have to put them in a wooden box and seal that. And then we have to put them in a zinc metal container and weld it shut. And then we have to pour concrete over it because their fucking corpses are dangerous.
What are they, Dracula and his brides in there, man?
Fucking right? Like,
insane.
God damn. It's just so, it's so much.
So much. And there's troops there with like firearms. That was such a weird thing. I thought, are they going to do some sort of salute? Are they there as an honor guard? It was kind of weird seeing the soldiers there. Maybe they're just responsible for watching over the sufficient sort of what am I trying to say? The procedure of this burial to make sure it's done as instructed.
Right. Yeah, maybe so. That's kind of how I took it, though. It was a little bit of like a military unit with, kind of like being buried with honors as much as that we can give when we have to dump concrete over your metal coffin.
Yeah.
Ugh. But boy, what haunting imagery of just the close-ups on the concrete swelling over the metal coffins and just, Ludmilla's face taking up the entire frame, kind of forcing us to look at her, at her crying. Ugh. Heavy.
Yep, brutal.
God, that music, man. That music gets me.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Episode fucking 3. Happy go lucky. Ugh.
Yeah. Yippee. Yippa-da-da-do-day. Good times.
Well, listener comments?
Listener comments, baby boy.
All righty. I've got one from Hannah Brown. She says,
Hannah
Brown. Oi. She says, as each episode progresses, there's something respectable about what lengths all of these people will go to for their country, even in the face of death. The miners know they just have to get on with it. Also, this could be the best example of makeup and prosthetics on those poor dying firemen that I have ever seen, and I genuinely hope that the department gets some awards for it. I definitely think this will be getting nominated for a lot of awards.
Good stuff. Maja Katunen says, for those who aren't familiar with it, I recommend looking up the story of Hisashi Oichi to see what happens when someone is kept alive for 83 days after receiving 17 sievert blast of radiation. Be warned, though, the photos are very graphic. The most infamous photo, often attached to this case, is actually speculated to be one of the Chernobyl firefighters, but that's a whole other internet rabbit hole. Just thought I'd mention it if anyone is in for some more gruesome shit after this episode.
I did look at at least some of the pictures, the article about it, and they are hard to fucking look at. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Pretty sad story. Poor Hisashi.
Yeah. Well, at least they're not gonna have to, I don't know. It's brutal. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying.
All right. Who else? We got, Mr. Matthew Lewis. Want to read his second comment. I can't imagine the burden of making the decisions that Boris, Legasov, and others had to make throughout. In episode 2, they asked to send 3 men to likely death to avert an almost certain disaster. In this episode, they brought in 400 miners to work for weeks on an effort that had less than a 50-50 chance of being needed at all. As it turns out, the core never penetrated the concrete, and I believe that over 100 miners died from their exposure. That's really good. I'm glad Matthew brought that up because that's something we didn't talk about. And that's true that the core didn't actually breach the concrete pad. It's a 50-50 shot and they had to be careful. But at the end of the day, that had to be something that haunted Legasov of that. We brought in these miners to basically handle that possibility, that eventuality that could happen. And it didn't. But a lot of men did still suffer and die because of it.
Right.
Ugh, it's brutal.
Brutal. I think I'm good. Unless you want to do anyone else.
I think I'm good.
Awesome. All right. So, any final thoughts on this shit?
Ooh, damn, man. It's fucking good. It's really good. I'm enjoying this show a lot, even though it's the most dreadfully fucking sad show that I've watched in so long.
Yeah.
But I'm really starting to enjoy this emerging story that we can see with Kalmyk and Legasov of that they know they're going to be going up against power, basically. They're going to be going against the grain of the entire Soviet, government.
Yep.
And that they feel they need to. They feel the moral burden to at this point. And I'm enjoying that story kind of emerging out of this disaster story.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait, man.
I think this is a great episode of television, and I think it's probably setting us up for some horrible shit. I'm guessing you're going to see soldiers roaming Pripyat, just wasting pets, which sounds horrible.
Sounds pretty rough.
Pretty fucking brutal. Brutal for the pets and brutal for the guys who have to do it. And And like I said, I'm concerned for Ludmilla's baby, and I am happy that we got the introduction of the miners. I think it's this perfect hinge between sort of like the beginning and the end of this series, because we're right in the middle here with episode 3. And it was nice to see inspiration. It was nice to see leadership that we could rally behind. And it was cool to see a man who took the responsibility to do what he had to do, and it had nothing to do with he wasn't bullied. Like I really liked the Glukov character. I think he was great. And like I said, we continue to get the story told by way of Sherbina discovering things that we discover. And I just think if we're going to be showing these poor bastards succumb to acute radiation syndrome, that it's good to sort of break it up with some of the brief moments of levity with Glukov and the miners.
Totally. Yeah. You know, and I'm glad we were talking about the miners again, because I forgot there's a really interesting fact. The real life Valery Legasov was born in Tula, the town that those miners were brought in from. And that city only had 300,000 inhabitants. So it's actually very possible that he knew some of the miners and maybe their families. So fuck, he had a connection to those guys.
Awesome.
Intense, man. But what a fucking great episode of TV.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, Mr. Anderson, thank you very much. Thanks you to all of the people who tuned in to listen to this live. Thank you to everyone who's listening to this, who may have discovered us because of this. Welcome. And don't forget to visit us on the web at libertygeek.net, right? We got all kinds of shows, Mr. Anderson.